Hello, everybody, and welcome to our podcast. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening as well. This is episode 6, and I've got my old sparring partner, Kerry O'Keefe, alongside me. Scott, great to have you along for episode 6. Looking forward to this.
As am I. Terrific to be with you, BJ.
And our very special guest is he was an icon in the 70s. He was a captain of Australia in the 70s and the 80s, and some say he was second best batsman to Bradman here in Australia. And I welcome Greg Chappell. Greg, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. You're just in a bit of lockdown up there, but you're looking good.
Well, surviving. I think that's the thing. And it's good to see you blokes have broken the compound to get to work. So you're both looking pretty good, all things considered.
Oh, mate, this is essential. Let's get into it, Skull. We're going to talk about bubble life because some Australian stars may not get into that first test match against Afghanistan, depending on the T20 World Cup. There is a clash of schedules there, isn't there?
Oh, given that there's quarantine, if they make the final, the quarantine period will run into the start of the test in Hobart against Afghanistan. Interesting, COVID bubbles may have the potential to decide series in the next few months, and this one certainly could. But it's a one-off test. It's not included in the World Test Championship. Afghanistan are a rising nation without question. But I wonder if Australia will box clever and say, right, given that a lot of petrol will be soaked out of Stark, Cummins and potentially Hazelwood in the T20 World Cup, were they to make the final, could they go into that Afghanistan test with somebody like James Pattinson, Michael Neser, Sean Abbott or the track specialist Jackson Bird? It's not to demean Afghanistan, but there are 6 tests in 7.5 weeks. I don't think the trio of Australian fast bowlers can play all 6 tests in that period.
Look, I agree with you. Well, Greg, I get your thoughts on it. I mean, this clash of scheduling has always been difficult. T20 cricket, if they get into the final, will some players not be able to get to that test match? Where do you think the loyalties will lie for Australia playing the best team?
Oh, look, I agree with Kerry. I think we've got to be smart. You know, with all due respects to Afghanistan, the Ashes series is the more important to us at the moment. And I think, the fast bowlers we found last summer, playing back-to-back test matches, it's really hard work. And playing that number of test matches in that many weeks is just too much to expect of almost anyone, let alone the fast bowlers. So I think common sense will prevail.
I wanted to get your thoughts on it also, Greg, about fatigue. I mean, you had that type of problem when you were captain. You ran through that period of time when there were 7 ducks in international cricket and test cricket. Do you think that's going to be a factor with our players here this summer?
Nice of you to bring it up, PJ. Thanks. Look, it is a problem, and we've seen it in the past. Steve Smith really struggled at the end of the last Ashes. He was pretty much drained by the end of that series. So it's it has to be expected that the amount of cricket that these guys play, that from time to time we're going to have to play less than our best 11. But, we've probably got 20 players that are, good enough to play Test cricket for Australia. And I don't think that any team should be looked at as being second best just because maybe 2 or 3 players are not available at that moment.
Mate, you're one of the greats of the game. You averaged 53 in Test cricket. Apologies for going straight to your 7 ducks, but that's Fox cricket.
That's the way we roll.
There you go. What is it? Clickbait or something?
Yeah, but mate, when you did come out of that, I'd love you to tell us a story. You were worried about footwork. You were getting out, for those noughts. You were worried about where your off stump is. And didn't some inebriated bloke outside the MCG solve the problem for you?
I don't think Rudy Webster had liked that description, Skull, because it was Rudy Webster, the West Indian doctor who lived in Melbourne for many years and managed the West Indian team during World Series cricket, was at a test match at the MCG when I had the last of those ducks, and I'd gone down into that bottom change room at the MCG, and I was sitting there still with the pads on, still trying to work out what had happened and what was going on. When Rudy came in and he said, "Look, Greg, I know you're probably getting a lot of advice at the moment, but are you watching the ball?" And I said something along the lines of, "What do you think I'm watching?" And he said, no. He said, not now, but when you get back to the hotel and you've got a bit of quiet time to yourself, are you really watching the ball like you normally do? And he was exactly right. And I'd got away from doing that. I'd got caught up in the anxiety and looking for all the technical issues when really the problem was in here. And once I worked that out, we went to Adelaide for the next test match the next week. And I got 60 odd there in the first innings of that test match, and then the following test, we went straight to New Zealand from there, and I got 100 in the first one-day game in New Zealand, and I was sort of back on track.
Can I ask you, Greg, about Steve Smith? I mean, he's now come out and sort of said, look, I would rather miss out on the T20 World Cup if it means getting prepared for an Ashes series here in Australia, which we have, because there's going to be limited amount of Sheffield Shield cricket. Do you think that's the right move for him?
Oh, yeah, look, I think he's got to do what's right for him. And obviously the Ashes will be a priority for him. So I think that would be sensible. Even if he decided to do the 2020 World Cup, well, that's certainly up to him. But I reckon having him fresh and ready to go for the Ashes would be fantastic. And don't worry about the lack of cricket. He will have played 1,000 innings in his head before he gets to that first test match. And just the fact that he's fresh and ready to go will, I think, be a wonderful thing for Australia. Great for him and great for Australia.
Do you think he could come back and captain the side?
Oh, yes, he could. Whether that's the best thing for him from a cricket point of view, and for the team from a cricket point of view, because no doubt the extra mental energy that the captaincy demands takes a lot out of a player. And I think, well, I saw it the first time around. I thought he was by the end of each series he was running out of gas, and I'd rather see him just keep making runs, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I actually think Australia can win the T20 World Cup without Steve Smith. I don't think they can win the Ashes without Steve Smith firing. He is a weapon. He averaged 110 against England in 2019 in that Ashes series. He averages 67 in Australia in Test cricket. The Poms will think, we've got Marnus Labuschagne, we've seen him in county cricket, we've worked him out a little. Joffre and Stuart Broad will take care of Warner. Yep. The guy they will talk about forever is Steve Smith, and that's why we need him 100% right, ready to go, fit and committed to the Ashes. If he is, he can lead Australia to the urn.
Look, I agree with that as well. I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure, Greg, that he's in our best T20 side. But there's been plenty of discussion about T20 cricket infecting Test match cricket in terms of batting techniques. Do you think there's an issue there, that there is a problem with T20 cricket and we're not seeing the best technically correct batsmen coming out in Test cricket? Look,
I think that's an easy answer to sheet it all home to T20 cricket. I'm not sure that that's totally correct. It is part of it from the point of view that T20 cricket now takes up time in a schedule. I think this is probably the hardest era ever for a young batsman to become a top-class red ball cricketer, because they're just not playing a lot of red ball cricket. When we were growing up, even though we played a lot of one-day games, they were played with the mentality of a test match. So you develop your style, your method, your technique, whatever you want to call it. And you had plenty of time to do that. I don't think that's the case. The other thing, and I've been a professional coach, and I'm very conscious of a lot of very good coaches that are out there, but I think there's a lot of interference with young players. We had the chance without coaches to develop our own style and work things out for ourselves. Again, I think young players are bombarded with information. I didn't see myself bat on video until I was probably playing Test cricket. Now, I'm grateful for that, because I might have been tempted to tamper with what I was doing, because the first time I saw myself bat on television, I didn't recognise myself because it didn't look the way it felt. It's a little bit like the first time you hear your voice recorded. It doesn't sound like it sounds to you. Well, that was what I felt when I saw myself bat for the first time. And, you know, as I say, if I'd seen that earlier, I might have been tempted to fiddle with what I was doing to try and make it look more like it felt. So, you know, all of this sort of stuff goes into, you know, player development, and they've got a lot more information than ever, but I'm not sure they need all that information.
And that was the key to you, Greg. I mean, you got a century on debut against England at the Wacker, but you already had 11 first-class centuries under your belt prior to that innings. So you knew how to get hundreds at first-class level. And that is the problem you see in people like Jason Sanger, Josh Philippi, even Cameron Green before he started to play. He got a lot of runs, but, you know, he wasn't seasoned. Whereas India came through their India A program, as you've pointed out, and Shubman Gill had 800 India A runs before he made his Test debut. So they knew at a level above first-class cricket they could handle. And you want that for Australian players as well.
Yeah, look, I think, you know, it's nobody's fault. You know, the game has developed, and, you know, with 3 formats, there's a lot more competition for space during a summer. And the opportunities to play and the professional era at first-class level, guys play longer at first-class level, and rightly so. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I'd want to do the same thing. But that means that there are a lot of good young players who aren't getting opportunities. You know, I played first-class cricket as an 18-year-old, so I had an opportunity to find my feet, as you said, in first-class cricket. But, you know, I looked at the Australian summer last year, and I think I found about 12 young players who have the potential to play for Australia who weren't getting a game at first-class level. Now, that is really dangerous from a long-term point of view for Australian cricket, because those guys are missing those opportunities that players in my era, and even, you know, Mark Waugh and Steve Waugh had opportunities to, you know, to play first-class cricket fairly young and had made a lot of runs before they played Test cricket. It's an issue. I don't know what the answer is, but, you know, we've got players contracted for 12 months of the year. Maybe we've got to look at other months of the year to play some cricket to make sure that the next generation are getting the development opportunities that they need.
Yeah, you certainly make some very valid points. Don't forget, summer begins here on Fox Sports with almost 60 days of international cricket getting underway in September. Australian fans will be treated to an epic season, including men and women's Ashes series against our old enemy, England. Tickets are on sale. Go to the website cricket.com.au for more information.
Chappell, the new batsman, you can bet your life he'll have a hot reception out there.
It's the bouncer, it's in the air, but it's going to clear the fieldsman and the boundary line. 6 runs to Greg Chappell.
Oh, and Chappell has got on the back foot, and has he given that some hammer?
There it is, to the left hand of David Gow. Greg Chappell looking for 2, but Kim Hughes sends him back, and Greg Chappell's first ever Test century at the Adelaide Oval.
One of the great things about our podcast, Road to the Ashes, is we get to relive some of the magical moments and some magical Ashes series as well. This time we're going to talk about 82-83 here in Australia. Australia went on and won that series, Skull, but
it did.
There are lots of very, very magical moments in that series, wasn't there?
Oh, there was, and it was captained by our guest today, Greg Chappell. And GC, I want to ask you, was that one of your most satisfactory achievements in Australian cricket by captaining a Ashes winning team at home?
Yeah, it was. You know, obviously I'd played in winning Ashes series before, but we'd lost the Ashes in England in '77. I was captain of that series. So it sort of felt like, you know, we needed to do something to get them back, and to be part of that and to be captaining that side was certainly one of the more pleasurable moments of my career.
Was it sort of a difficult decision? Kim Hughes captained in '81 in England, and Australia lost that series. You came back and took over the captaincy. Was that a decision you made that you'd want to sort of captain more of a home series towards that end of your career there?
Well, I'd made the decision in '81 that we had a young family. I had a business and business partners. I'd played cricket everywhere around the world that was available at that stage. I wasn't ready to retire, but I wanted to be able to spend more time at home and around my business and help the business partners as well. I love playing cricket in Australia, so I was more than happy just to finish my career with a few seasons of playing at home. When I stepped down as captain, and I did it a couple of times, and each time I came back, I was made captain again. But each time I stepped down, I didn't expect to get the captaincy back, and it wasn't something I was looking for. But the selectors and the board obviously were happy for me to be captain. I think perhaps, if things had gone better for Kim in that period or in those periods, he probably would have kept the captaincy. But, I must admit I wasn't looking for it back, but when it was offered, it wasn't something you were going to knock back.
And that series, Greg, 82-83, Channel 9 promoted it as going to be a very physical series, lots of aggression, Dennis Lillee, the swing of Alderman, and within a test, both those bowlers were gone. And you somehow got the best out of Thomson, Hogg and Henry Lawson.
Yeah, Henry had a particularly good series. But yeah, Dennis bowled a lot of overs in that first test match. He'd broken down in New Zealand a year or so before that, during the Christchurch test match of that series. Had some knee problems. He'd come back. He'd played for Western Australia against England at the start of that summer and played the Perth test, as you said, but he finished up having a knee operation. I think Merv Cross in Sydney did another scrape on his knees. He had quite a few of those during his career, so that finished him off. And Terry Alderman, of course, got his sports mixed up at the whacker and tried to tackle an intruder and was put out of that series as well. So we were lucky that we had. There's the incident there.
What was going through
Terry,
your mind there? Could you believe what was going on when the crowd came onto the ground and the police were chasing people down?
Well, it was a period where there'd been quite a few ground invasions. You can see there Terry's in a lot of trouble, but this lunatic had come out onto the ground. We'd had a number of ground invasions over the years, and we had complained to the administrators at the time that more needed to be done to keep these people off the ground, because they were often, the invasions came at inconvenient times, inappropriate times during games when there was a bit of pressure on. And I can remember giving a chap in New Zealand a bit of a paddle on the behind when he invaded a test match a year or so before that. There'd been a couple, one in Sydney that I can remember, a few others. Anyway, I think we all really, didn't appreciate these guys coming over the fence, and I don't quite know what got into Clem's mind on the day. I mean, he was probably just annoyed, like most of us were, that it was happening. He just needed to learn to tackle a bit better.
Oh, he got that horribly wrong, Terry Alderman. Second test match at the Gabba, it was Kepler Wessels on debut, scored 100. It was a tricky time because it was the Rebel Tour. England were depleted with their side, but great test match for Kepler Wessels.
Oh, and what a player he was. I mean, Greg saw him in World Series cricket. We knew he was the real deal. And he came into this series. People didn't know much about him. He was South African. But he had that openers game, short back lift, punched everything. Just the ideal opener, brave as all get out, and had a pretty extensive stroke range.
Yeah.
Greg and a lot of the others knew this, but 162 on debut, terrific start for Kepler.
God, Greg, it looked awkward with his technique, but gee, he was effective. You would have seen a lot of him in Queensland.
Yeah, he's just one of the toughest guys that I played cricket with. he hated getting out. He loved making runs. I mean, all I can remember from that Test match is just seeing his front pad just in the way all the time. And I'm sure the England bowlers targeted that pad, but he just kept hitting the ball. And as Kerry said, he had shots all around the wicket. Even though he looked like he closed himself off to the leg side, he still was able to play. Had a lot of shots on the leg side, but a terrific team man. We had seen him during World Series cricket up against the West Indians and the rest of the world side, and he never took a backward step. Terrific team man, and was great to see him get away to a great start, because obviously, his native country was banned from Test cricket at that stage. So for him to get the chance to come and play in Australia was obviously a wonderful thing. And I'm pleased for him that he got the chance to go back and play for South Africa at a later date.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, second Test match, you guys won at the Gabba, then you went to Adelaide. You won that one there in Adelaide by 8 wickets. But surprisingly to me, that was your first 100 at the Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, surprising to me as well. But you got to understand, I left the Adelaide Oval because it didn't suit me. The long straight boundaries were no good. I had to run a lot of 3s and 4s at Adelaide Oval. The Gabba was much more attractive with the short straight boundaries. I didn't use the short boundaries at the side at Adelaide Oval very much, because I tended to hit the ball more straight down the ground. So that was part of the reason. But I'd got a lot of good scores at Adelaide Oval. I just never finished them off.
Well, we're looking at some of the vision there, Skull. And I mean, lots of batsmen cashed in at Adelaide Oval, but it is a wonderful place to play cricket, isn't it? Especially against England.
And Greg was one of the great players in the V. And of course, if you played in the V at the Adelaide Oval, you had to run 4. Whereas at the Gabba,
Well, it was a great win by Australia at the Adelaide Oval, but the Test match I want to talk about also is at the MCG. Skull, I'll come to you first. Boxing Day is always a magical moment when you play England in it. England won this by 3 runs.
They did.
The smallest margin for nearly 80 or 90 years.
And only Test cricket can produce the drama that was created late day 4 and on the final day, when Alan Border and Jeff Thomson almost pulled it off. But some fantastic stories came out of that.
Yep.
I mean, apparently, and Greg might back this up, Rod Marsh had cracked a beer when Tomo walked out to bat the previous evening at number 11, thinking, well, we'll be drinking losers' beer soon. And they were still there at stumps. And did Rodney Marsh then say, I want everybody to wear the same clothes tomorrow morning that you've got on today? Is that a true story, Greg?
Yeah, that's a true story. But the other story was that we were staying at the Hilton Hotel, which was just up the road, obviously, from the MCG, and we walked down to the ground, and we were walking down. I don't know we needed 40-odd runs or whatever it was. On that last morning, we were walking down to the ground, and we couldn't believe how many people were walking towards the MCG. And we joked, and I might have made the comment myself. Why are all these people coming for one ball? It was just amazing that it's going to be the shortest day's cricket of all time, and there we were, nearly 2 hours later. Tomo had done a tremendous thing. I think he faced about 62 balls or something, and he had hardly played a shot. He'd just done the right thing and held his end up and let AB get the runs. And then we got within 3, and he decided that he could hit the winning runs himself. He played his first shot of the day, and he got caught. I mean, once again, Both got a wicket with a half tracker, but and it was a drop catch. I think Dusty Miller had to run around behind Tavare or someone to take the catch in the end. You could see the scenes in the dressing room there. We just wanted to finish the series off. We wanted to win it. We had our chance to win it there, and we didn't quite finish it off. So it was a little bit frustrating in the end. We'd sort of signed off the day before, as Kerry said. This one's gone, and all of a sudden it was back, and we had a chance.
And I've heard Tomo say he was absolutely so upset. He sat with the pads on in the room, having tried a square cut. He said, I never square cut. A half tracker, as you said. But then he jumped up and he ran into the Poms room And they said, "You gonna have a beer with us, Tomo?" I said, "No, I'm going to kill you blokes in Sydney." But that was Tomo, wasn't it?
It was Tomo, and you're never quite sure what you were going to get, other than he was going to give you everything he had on the day. One of the great tragedies I think of that era was Tomo's shoulder injury in the Adelaide Test match a few years earlier against Pakistan, when he collided with Alan Turner, your great mate Fidder and Turner, Skull.
Yes.
Very hard head, and he hit Tomo's shoulder as they both went for the same catch. And I think a few of us were unkind enough to say to Fidder after that if he'd been put out of Test cricket forever, I don't think anyone would have noticed. But Tomo really it did make a difference. He was still a good bowler, no doubt about it, and he was still quick. But those first 2.5 years of Test cricket, I have never seen anything like it. I batted against him once, or he reckons I batted against him twice in Shield cricket. The first time he must have been bowling medium paces, because I don't remember it. But I remember my first season for Queensland, the last game of the season, and he hadn't been picked by New South Wales at all that year. And he played in that last Test match, and he bowled like the wind. And I heard that he wasn't very happy in New South Wales, and suggested to Queensland Cricket that we should get him to Brisbane, because I didn't want to bat against him again.
And that was the key. You guys were prepared to say, well, you can go surfing Tuesday and Thursday rather than go to training. We weren't.
Well, it wasn't just Tuesday and Thursday. I mean, Saturday mornings, he and Lenny would go surfing on Saturday morning, and if the surf was up, they'd turn up late for a club game. So I think that was the problem with New South Wales Cricket had with them at the time.
Yes.
Greg, thanks for your time today. You guys went on and you regained the Ashes and you won that series 2-1. But thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. I love talking about the 80s and that time, and reliving that magical 82-83 series. Appreciate it. Thank you.
No, I enjoyed it, boys. Thanks very much.
Skull, great to have you on episode 6, Road to the Ashes.
Great to be here with you.
Always great to chat. And we want to thank everyone for watching, and thanks everyone for listening as well. And you can download the podcast on your favourite podcast provider.
This has been a Fox Sports production.